Hello, hello, hello. You will need your interactive notebook to do 2 vocab words today. What am I doing? I am going on here. That is what I'm doing. Okay. So it's your blue interactive notebook pages. We've done caretakers, population, recognized, and relatives so far. And if we flip it to the next page, we have resources and success. So resources are things that are available when you need it. So here I have some very important resources we need every single day. We need sun, we need food, and we need water to drink. And that's supposed to be like water and then a drink. So those are resources we need in order to survive. Okay, and down here for success means to end that ends well. So something that you've been doing and it turned out very well, you're proud of it, you like it, it's a success. So here I have 100% or an A+ on a test that I did. That was a huge success for me because it turned out the way I wanted it to. Okay. So make sure you pause the video to get those done. And then we are going to stay on this actually. My Connect Ed is not working today. I have no idea why. So I'm going to have to do this on the overhead like this. So this is going to be a little bit a longer story, especially because I'm reading it. Not that I'm a slow reader, but I'm not going to be reading as fast as the computer would. And I'm going to read it like this because I can't get the thing to work. Whooping cranes is our expository text for today. So whooping cranes are a special kind of bird that are in danger. So they are in one of the categories for animals who potentially could become extinct if we don't do something about it, if they don't get saved. So let's try to figure out how scientists work together to save these endangered animals. How can people help animals survive is our essential question again. Read about whooping cranes. Find out how a group of scientists are helping these birds survive. Not only are we going to be talking about that essential question, but we still have point of view that we are doing. So point of view, remember, is the author's opinion. So I'm going to be stopping throughout the way, and we are going to be talking about the author's opinion in this. Okay. Whooping cranes. Oopsie. There are many types of heroes. Superheroes in comics catch bad guys. Astronauts risk their lives to explore space. Doctors devote their careers to finding cures for dreadful diseases. Our story has heroes too. Scientists and their helpers are saving the whooping cranes. So here we're starting off with the introduction of there are many types of heroes in the world. And one of them happened to be scientists because they did something special for these endangered cranes. Whoopers need help. Long ago, whooping cranes lived all over North America. Then people started hunting them. Farmers and builders took over the marshes these birds called homes. So people were hunting them, and then people were building home on their habitats. Whoopers were losing the resources they needed. By 1941, only 15 whooping cranes were left. Whew, that's a small amount of whooping cranes. In the wild, it looked as if they could die out forever. Some people refused to let this happen. The government reserved land for these cranes to live on. Hunters could not enter this wildlife refuge. Scientists guaranteed this tiny flock in Texas. 70 years later, its population has grown to 200 birds. So they started off with 15 and now they're at 200. But one flock is not enough. A disease or a storm could wipe it out completely. Scientists decide to create a new flock in Wisconsin. Two groups of birds are safer than one. So here we have a big author's point of view. We have a problem, which is that the whooping cranes are becoming endangered, and there's only 15 of them left. Scientists did, however, made a protected land, and they were able to reproduce to 200. But that is only one flock, and it's only in one place. So what is the author's point of view about just having one flock in the world of whooping cranes? Let me read to find out. Scientists guarded this tiny flock in Texas. 17 years later, population has grown to 200 birds, but one flock is not enough. A disease or storm could wipe it out completely. Scientists decided to create a new flock in Wisconsin. Two groups of birds are safer than one. So what is his point of view of having only one flock of whooping cranes in the world? Right. He thinks that one is not enough because they can become endangered again if there was a big storm to wipe them out. And he also thinks that there should be more than one when he says two groups of birds are safer than one. A tough problem. Building a new flock of whoopers is harder than it seems. These cranes are born up north. Then they migrate south in the fall to avoid the cold winter. In spring, they fly back north for the summer. Who says birds aren't smart? Scientists have a big problem to solve. They couldn't just grab some whoopers from the first flock to start a new one. When returning north, adult birds will only go back to the place they were born. So all the members of the second flock had to be born in a new spot. How could that happen? Who would their parents be? So here we have a problem where they want these whooping cranes to migrate to a safer place. But whooping cranes, they think differently than that. When they are born, they always migrate to the place that they are born because that's where they know. So that can become a problem when trying to get these birds to migrate to a better place. Here is their solution. 11 eggs were about to hatch in the spring of 2001. Their parents were ready to welcome these chicks to the world. Their puppet parents, that is. So if I go down here and show you, we have a tiny baby whooping crane right here. And this is actually a puppet parrot, a puppet whooping crane. So this is actually a scientist raising this little chick. So let's see what they do. Scientists had to raise the chicks, but the whoopers weren't supposed to get used to people. The birds needed to be wild to stay safe. So humans pretended to be whooping cranes. They wore white costumes to hide their faces and bodies. They wore puppets on their arms to deal with the chicks. So what is the reason why they are dressing up as whooping cranes and not humans? It's because they want the whooping cranes, chicks, to be used to other whooping cranes and not humans. Because they want them to stay safe, to stay away from hunters. The caretakers never spoke near the birds. They talked to the chicks by playing tapes of real whooping cranes. They also had real whoopers in the refuge. The chicks needed to know what actual grown-up whooping cranes looked like. Caretakers used the puppets to teach the chicks the same skills that real parents would. The puppets showed them where to swim and where to sleep. They even taught the chicks how to get along with other cranes. The puppets could teach them most things, but they couldn't teach the chicks how to fly. So they took these baby chicks and they hatched them where they wanted them to start migrating. And then the scientists dressed up as adult whooping cranes to teach them the life skills they need in order to survive. But there's only one problem. We humans can't teach birds how to do what? We can't teach them how to fly. So here is a text feature right here. What text feature is this? Right, it's a real picture. And right here, up here, is called a caption. And the caption tells us what we are looking at in the picture. So scientists use puppets to train the babies how to eat and drink and where to find the right kind of food. So here is a picture of a scientist teaching these little whooping cranes how to survive. The biggest parent of them all. Pilots in ultralight planes could do the job. They put on their costumes and got to work. At first, the plane just rolled across the ground. A pilot played a special crane call, which meant, "Come on, follow me." That's exactly what the chicks did, of course. The treats given out by the pilot's puppet help a lot. As days passed, the plane sped up. The chicks did too, flapping their wings, helping them grow faster. It also made their wings stronger. At least they ran fast enough and flapped hard enough, and up they went. Soon the cranes were flying almost every day. They had to. Fall was coming. They had to be strong enough to migrate more than 1,200 miles to Florida. Okay, so that is how they helped them to learn how to fly, is that they gave them treats, and then they used this plane to go faster each day, so that way the chicks would follow them, and eventually the plane would go so fast that the chicks needed to use their wings to fly to catch up to them. And that's how they learned to fly. So here's another caption for our real picture. The whoopers learned to follow the ultralight on the ground and in the air. They had to learn to recognize their Wisconsin home from the air because the plane would not lead them back next spring. Operation Migration. Finally, the big day came. The experiment started with 11 eggs. 2 chicks had gotten sick and died. So if 11 eggs were what we had starting out, and 2 chicks had gotten sick and died, how many chicks do we have now? We now have 9 baby chicks. 1 couldn't fly well and moved to a zoo. Okay, so now we're down to 8 chicks. The other 8 whoopers were ready to go. 2 ultralight revved their engines. 1 would lead the birds, the other would track down cranes that strayed away from the flock. The planes took off. The birds did too. They were on their way. Planes and birds were only part of the migration a crew drove south to. The birds had to eat and rest each night. Scientists had to choose safe places along the way. The crew rushed ahead to set up pens for them to stay in. So eventually, when they taught them to fly, now they needed to teach them where there were safe places to land for them and to survive when they started to migrate down south. All right. The trip was hard. The cranes flew up 95 miles on good days, only 20 on bad ones. Often rain or wind kept them from flying at all. One sad night, a giant storm ripped their pen apart. Caretakers spent hours searching and calling for their whoopers. All were fine except 1. So we were down to 8, now we're down to 7. He had flown into a power line and died. After 48 days, the plane flew over the birds' winter home in Florida. A caretaker on the ground played the whooping crane call. Okay, the first part of the journey was a success. Okay, so here is called a what? A map. Good, and it's showing us that they started in Wisconsin and they flew them down to Florida in the south in the wintertime for them to survive because they couldn't survive in the cold during the winter. But then they needed to show them how to get back to Wisconsin in the summer. A warm winter. What was one of the first things the Whoopers learned about Florida? Crabs are delicious. The shells were hard, but the meat was soft. Puppet parents helped the Whoopers learn to peck them apart. At first, the crane stayed in a pen as big as a football field. It even had a pond with a fake Whooper parent in it to make them feel safe. Actually, they were safer in the pond. Cranes usually sleep in the water at night. Splashing sounds warn them if a predator is nearby. In time, caretakers took the top off the pen. The cranes flew out to explore more of their new homes. Caretakers hid, watching them enjoy yummy shrimp and snails. Generally, the Whoopers returned to the pen at night. Sometimes they didn't. 2 cranes were killed by bobcats. Now there were only 5. So things happen. It's life. So they're trying to get these animals to survive, and unfortunately, some are getting killed off, but that's life. But they are still trying to teach these other Whoopers how to survive in these conditions. Okay, so they're in Florida, and they're teaching them how to get their own food, where they should stay down here. And one good fact is that they are safer in water because if they're sleeping, they sleep standing up. So if they sleep standing up and they hear some splashes going on in the water, they know that that predator is trying to get to them, and that will wake them up and alert them. Okay. In the spring, the birds started eating more. That was a good sign. They were storing energy for the trips north. Still, the scientists wondered, would the cranes know when to leave? Homeward bound. One day, caretakers heard radio signals. The cranes had leg bands that sent out these sounds. The Whoopers were on the move. Caretakers jumped in 2 trucks to follow the signals. They had to hurry. The trip home would be much faster. Air has currents just like water does, but birds ride these currents the same way that surfers ride waves. The cranes traveled more than 200 miles the very first day. They were headed north. But would they remember their route? Soon, scientists had another thing to worry about. One crane left the group. A truck turned to track her. Where was she going, and why? What were the scientists worried about? So why were they worried about this other crane venturing off from the flock? We are almost done, guys. More pages. Day by day, the cranes kept flying. Then the group of 4 reached Lake Michigan. They began to circle. Oh no, thought the trackers. They do not know which way to go. The Whoopers kept circling around and around. After 2 hours, they finally turned west. They were on course. 11 days after leaving Florida, these 4 cranes came in for the landing. They were very close to the pen they grew up in. What about that last crane? She ended up visiting a flock of sandhill cranes for a while. Sandhill cranes are relatives of the whooping cranes. 2 weeks later, she came back home to the refuge. So she was safe. She just saw some other type of crane, which ended up to be a relative of the whooping crane. And she went to go visit, but eventually she came back to the flock. So she's all good. The first migration was finished, but the whooping crane's recovery was just begun. The next year, these 5 cranes flew south by themselves. Their ultralights were busy, leading 16 new chicks. The planes still led migrations each fall, but now whooping crane's parents are leading their own chicks down south. Some of these chicks have grown up enough to have babies of their own. The whooping crane is still threatened. It remains one of America's most endangered birds, but scientists are hopeful. Luckily, the flock will keep getting bigger. So after learning about the success, what is the author's point of view about how the chicks are doing now? Well, they're still endangered, but scientists are still hopeful that the flock keeps getting bigger.